I had a grandfather who was a straight-talking Yorkshireman, and he died just as the Blairite cultural revolution was beginning. The silver lining of his death, of course, is that he didn't have to witness the destruction and betrayal of the country he loved. And I remember him for making several harsh but wise comments about the state of the world when I was a boy. One of the things he'd say that I remember was whenever we were watching the news and something about the Middle East came on, he would say it's a wild, unpredictable and complex region out there full of fiery people. They need a strong leader, even a dictator, to keep everything in line. I'm sure if my grandfather was around today posting such comments on Facebook, the Starminator would have a jail cell waiting for him because the liberal elite would see him as evil and bigoted for such comments. And this is because our also-wise liberal leaders are so very desperate to see complex situations featuring unique peoples from unique political backgrounds and cultures as all fitting in neatly to the liberal frame. After all, we're all just live and let live Blairites who want to watch Love Island and fawn over celebrities on Graham Norton, aren't we? Talking of fawning, here's everyone's favourite fake conservative liberal sellout Rory Stewart gazing lovingly into the eyes of Syria's new de facto leader Ahmed Hussein al-Sharaa. You may remember that Rory Stewart and Alastair Campbell went to Syria to interview its new de facto leader after the supposed brutalism of Assad. Stewart said afterwards, "Amazing interview, a real privilege to be back in Syria, stunning turn of events and the most incredible story with so much unknown for the future." Well, yes, Rory, the future often is unknown, but I dare say even my dear old grandfather could have told you when you depose a dictator over there, things tend to get a bit messy. Now, I would show you some of the footage coming out of Syria at the moment, but it's just too brutal and graphic. Number one, I wouldn't force it on you, and number two, YouTube would take the video down anyway, but I have linked it below if you do want to look at some of the stuff that's going on, but it comes with a big warning. Some of it is quite brutal. But as a quick overview of what's going on, after Assad was toppled, it's created a vacuum which has been taken over by the new leadership, which are essentially Islamists, and the forces loyal to him are massacring ethnic minorities such as the Alawites and groups such as Christians. Now, as I say, this is being done in the most brutal fashion, and not just to men, but to women and children as well. I wonder if Rory Stewart is still fawning over al-Sharaa, also known as al-Julani now. Now, maybe it's because they were anti-Assad, maybe it's because they were pro the new leadership, maybe it's because it's Christians being slaughtered, but none of this fits their worldview, so the liberal elite are essentially just ignoring all of this. Now, something about this really grinds my gears, and I think it's because Stewart and Campbell and the rest of the Blairites almost act as if they're more moral than us. They have bigger hearts, more moderate political positions, and don't seem to realise they've made an absolute mess of the Middle East. They've murdered thousands, if not millions of people. They've created vacuums for extremist parties to rise, and they still act like they should treat us with total scorn because we're not, quote, moderate, loving liberals. Now, there's a lesson herein that the Western world has to learn very, very quickly. As the Soviet dissident Alexander Solzhenitsyn stated, the line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart. In another sense, we could say there's a shadow and a light side to everything. Yet in the West, we have this idea that centre-left somehow equals good, moderate, kind, and the right equals bad. This is completely false. It's all presentation. It's Blairite spin to win over the English desire for moderation. The reality is that Blair and the Blairites, properly understood, are violent ideologues abroad and subversive revolutionaries who've destroyed our home nations. Once you get beyond the slick presentation, the emotional manipulation and the PR, it all becomes clear. In the Blairite view, which is just the liberal view, they believe all men are just pawns, blank slates waiting to be enlightened by, quote, liberal values. This is exactly how Rory Stewart thinks. Despite he himself travelling through the Middle East, he never lost his liberal delusions. After all, you can take the boy out of Eton, but you can't take Eton out of the boy. The Blairites seem to struggle to understand that liberalism itself is a peculiarly Western phenomena, and for it to work, it depends upon a strong religion, a nation, homogeneity. These things provide the high trust foundations for us to have freedoms in society. However, all they want is the freedom without the architecture underpinning it. They think it could just be lifted and popped anywhere else in the world and it will work just the same. It seems to me that they just don't understand the world. It's why they go and rub shoulders with Islamists, and why Rory Stewart, who's supposed to be, remember, one of our country's leading political analysts, confidently stated that Kamala Harris was going to beat Trump comfortably. It also seems to me that Campbell and Stewart and the like think that reality itself is bigoted. And if someone points out the harsh truths of life, they love it because then they have a personification of supposed bigotry they can point the finger at and act as if they're the tolerant, kind ones. But what do they do when the murderers come? When the slaughter begins, when the blood starts to run from the men, women and the children? Well, they're busy doing their self-aggrandising podcasts, speaking with Guardian journalists over fancy dinners in swanky London restaurants, lecturing the rest of us from big city lecterns about how they're the moral ones who have to stem the tide of the, quote, populist right. In essence, these people have no moral authority over us, and it's an absolute travesty that they act like they do. It's time that the liberal tyranny was over and time for a new dawn. As always, these are just my thoughts. Do let me know what you think down below. Do consider subscribing to the Substack, and also do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.